Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm TJ Pache with Ready for Tuesday. I'm very happy that you are here with us for this conversation. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes. We will leave time toward the end for audience questions, so please use the Q&A feature to submit those as we go. This conversation will be recorded for posterity, and we will share the recording afterward. Today's webinar is about cybersecurity spending decisions. Most election offices are not choosing between a good security program and a great one. They are deciding what to do with the resources that they have, the short windows that they have to spend it, and all of the different needs and wants associated with that. This has only gotten harder over the last few years. The need for excellent cybersecurity services has grown, but support has shifted. The list of things that folks need to worry about continues to grow. Phishing, ransomware, insider risk, all of those things lay some artificial intelligence enabled capabilities for bad actors on top of that, and it just gets scarier and scarier the more that we talk. Our conversation today will take a practical look at where the first dollars within any, or the first new dollars with any cybersecurity program should go, investments that have paid off in the experience of the three excellent panelists that we have today, and then how to plan for recurring costs when funding is often one time, and then what free or low cost help is still on the table. I'm going to I'm going to give each of my panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. We're going to start with, some people call him the election technology reverend, but we just call him Trevor. Trevor Timmons with his intro.
Hey, thank you very much, TJ. Delighted to be here. We've got a great panel here. I'm excited about this. I worked for 30 years for the Secretary of State in Colorado, IT and cybersecurity. The past few years, I've been doing IT consulting, worked for CISA as a contractor for a little while, worked for the elections group, now with Ready for Tuesday, and the Election Security Exchange. And I love this community. I love this mission set, and I'm delighted that y'all have chosen to join us today. Thank you very much.
And everybody loves Trevor in return. Lorenzo, to you.
Thank you, TJ. Name's Lorenzo White. I come with over 25 years of IT and cybersecurity experience. Former CIO of a public company. Done quite a bit of advisory level, executive level advisory. Also played a heavy role in cybersecurity for Florida elections. Was the cyber navigator program manager. Ran the efforts and create a lot of the standards that we assess by for the local counties in the state of Florida. So now I'm, probably consult for elections, as well as other organizations. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've got the best state covered with Florida, but maybe Ohio can be number two, Spencer. Spencer, with your intro.
Sure. Yes, Ohio will be number two today since I'm outnumbered here in Ohio. So Spencer Wood, I am currently with the Election Security Exchange. So prior to joining the exchange, I was both a cybersecurity advisor and election security advisor for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, better known as CISA. And then prior to that, I held technology roles with the state of Ohio, including CIO for the Ohio Secretary of State's office. So thank you for having me, TJ.
Excellent, excellent. And I said Ohio second, Florida first, but I think Trevor knows that Colorado is the best. And in order to know that, all you have to do is just ask any of them, and they'll tell you how great they are. They make it very easy. All right, let's jump into the conversation. This is for anybody, when you first walk into an office that wants to improve its security posture, what do you look at first?
I don't mind jumping in on that. Um, what I would say is I would go back to when I would train the navigators to do security assessments. I tell them the assessment starts in the parking lot. So when I walk into a building, I'm already checking out their physical security, if they have cameras, where I am in their physical space when I come in, like what do I have access to? as a guest in their space. Can I touch and see any computers? Can I other exposed network ports? Those are the kind of things I would look for. And those are easy grabs for most counties to take care of and kind of mitigate.
I love Lorenzo's perspective. I mean, looking at it with eyes open as you're approaching the physical space, I think is the first thing to do. The first thing I would do after you walked inside is whose responsibility is security? And I wouldn't even focus on cybersecurity or physical security. I said, who is in charge? Who's responsible for monitoring your security? And then use that to tease out some individual things. I'm a big believer in the idea of one neck to grab um, instead of having shared multiple responsibilities. I think that in terms of operational duties and functionally actually meeting some of those needs, I think having a matrix organization can work. I think someone needs to be at the top of that pyramid. And it doesn't mean they're a supervisor, a manager, the clerk, they could be anybody, but someone needs to understand themselves to be, oh, I'm the one who is supposed to be paying attention to this and kind of be that go-to person when someone has a funny question, about security, whether that's cyber or physical.
Well, and one thing I would add, TJ, is, a lot of times, I mean, Lorenzo and, Trevor are, spot on. It's also a lot of times the most basic of things. So you walk in the office and there are people not sitting at their desk and their computers are still signed in. So I could walk up to the desk and send an email. When I was, Secretary of State CIO, if I would see someone who would do that, I would walk over and send myself an email from them and then reply back and say, oh, by the way, this was sent from your computer. Make sure you lock this computer up. So, I mean, a lot of times it's the really basic things that trip most people up. And most intrusions are not, this crazy advanced threat actor, AI driven stuff. I mean, not that that isn't real. It's
Yeah.
usually just the basics. You leave your front door open, people are going to walk right in.
Spencer and Trevor, I know you all through the Election Security Exchange worked on a resource, cybersecurity first things first, or resources, physical security first things first. Can you give us kind of a rundown of uh, thinking about those things, thinking about associated costs, where folks can start? Lorenzo, I know you didn't work on that resource, but I'm sure there will be conversation that flows from the question.
Sure.
Spencer, Trevor.
Yeah, and I could start. And, a lot of the things that are in the first things first gate for both cyber and physical are easy to low cost solutions that almost every single election office can do. For example, protect screen from prying eyes. Make sure you lock your screen before you leave. Take a phishing test. Take a phishing refresher. Everyone needs to be taking phishing refreshing. Make sure your software is up to date. Make sure you run Windows updates. Use a password manager because we're all humans and we forget things. Or we will just reuse passwords. Even people who say they don't, they do, unless you use a password manager. And probably the biggest thing, and typically this is already included, so it's no additional cost, is enable multi-factor authentication, and more specifically, phishing resistant multi-factor authentication on every single piece of technology you use. Everyone's already doing it when they go to their bank. You got to stick in your ATM card and you got to type in your PIN. So everyone's already doing multi-factor authentication. Try to do that with everything else in your life.
And
I've
and
noticed.
and
I've
almost
noticed
every
that. I want to make a joke, Trevor. I've noticed that I my phishing vulnerability has gone down considerably since I just stopped reading emails. So sorry, Trevor. Thanks
no,
for
no,
laughing and thanks for letting me interrupt you.
no, that's good. So the focus of those, okay, so I'll start with almost every commercial service that you use for something offers a way of doing at least two-factor authentication, right? It has become a basic standard. It is, as Spencer said, it's probably the most important thing you can do to reduce your exposure to potential password theft or password exposure, right? Is have that second factor, have a multi-factor way of actually securing your accounts. And I just want to put a cap on those first things first guides. We really intentionally pulled those together to identify high impact, low effort, low cost things that you could do, maybe not today, maybe not this week, but certainly within the next month. If you decide that you're going to spend some time on that, they're not a heavy lift, and they are going to measurably improve your office's security from the physical and from the cybersecurity side.
Lorenzo, did this inspire any thoughts?
No, I mean, I think they're spot on. Those are things that really have no extra cost in doing. Stuff you're already spending money on because a lot of those services are included, especially with the MFA. The identity part is very important for security. It's probably one of the first low-hanging fruit to go after. So yeah, nothing to add there. It's everybody spot on.
Excellent. All right. If I am an election administrator in a small to medium-sized county, so I want to important framing there. I am not Denver. I am not Franklin County. I'm not Miami-Dade, using places all of you are familiar with. Uh, I am instead, maybe 40,000 voters or fewer. I've got a staff of 4 to 5, and I got $5,000 right now, and I was told you got to spend this within 30 days. Is there anything that I can do with that? What should I be thinking about? I know some of the things you all have mentioned cost money. Where would you prioritize? Well, actually, I can do this because I'm the moderator. I just doubled it to $10,000. If I've got $10,000, this is so fun. What can I do? Maybe we'll make the question again with 50,000. But where should I start?
So I'll jump in first. So TJ, I like the way that you framed it up, right? Smaller office. Um, the first thing that I would look at is if your office is not using a professional email service provider and document managed system like Microsoft 365, like Google Workspace, um, that'd be one of the very early things I would look at. Now it does come with a continuing obligation. So if you have one-time money, you actually need to do the math and think about how you could do that. But I think that moving to a professionally managed email service provider and file storage system, I think is, again, for small office, understanding there's a monthly obligation. That's one of the first things I would look at if they're not already doing that.
Excellent. Spencer, Lorenzo.
Well, I would say I was actually Trevor already stole my thing is to move to a professional email, organization. And also remember, you also use this opportunity to move over to a .gov domain because .gov is kind of almost a trust signal right now that people are like, oh, okay, .gov actually is a legitimate thing. And also remember, let's say it's TJ's $10,000. You switch into .gov, some of those things may also include print costs because you have to buy new business cards and things like that as well. The other thing that I would do, well, first of all, with the email stuff, as Trevor mentioned, a lot of times you can pre-buy 3 years worth of service. So you could prepay for 3 years worth of service. Granted, you need to know what you're going to do in year 4. But then also looking at, do you have any other technology that is really out of date? So for example, I have seen a election of offices that potentially may be still running Windows 10. So if you're running Windows 10 workstations, it's time to go buy a new computer and, put old Bertha out to the farm, so to speak, and get a new modern laptop, Windows 10, Apple, whatever your jam is. And then lastly, making sure that your firewall is configured for auto updates. So if you're not already doing that, hire an IT professional to come in and make sure your firewall is getting automatic updates so you don't have to worry about it 3 years from now, 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now.
Lorenzo, Trevor, and Spencer have already spent so much of our money. What
Yeah,
else can we do?
stole money and stole things I was going to say. So let me give something that's actually usually of no cost to organization to keep the pool going. And one thing they should consider is de-scoping anything that's not needed. Like, do you really need Wi-Fi in the office? That will lower your threat footprint quite a bit, just not having Wi-Fi in the office. So I would look through certain things like that to consolidate get rid of services that are just not needed, that you may be paying for or have an existing additional overhead to maintain and protect. Why have it? You know, especially in a smaller office, it gives you one less thing to worry about.
That's all. You just got us some extra money, Lorenzo. Now we've got 10,000 plus the Wi-Fi costs. That's awesome. I would say, as a lowly election communications or former election communications professional, you can take my free Wi-Fi and Netflix out of my cold, dead hands. All right, let's see. I think we framed this conversation largely as one focused on cybersecurity, but you all have already begun to talk about some of those physical security strategies that I think in many ways can also serve excellent, larger operational or cybersecurity purposes. What are those things? Kind of going back to that initial question where you said, I start in the parking lot, but once you get past the parking lot, where do you keep going?
Well, as far as the physical side of things, I think it was already mentioned about the screens being visible. It shouldn't, from the public viewing space, you shouldn't be able to see any of the screens. Also, one thing that I used to catch all the time, which I'm happy to say most of just everybody in Florida doesn't do anymore, is having PCs that are accessible. USB drive. Easy to walk up to a counter with the computer sitting on the top and stick a thumb drive into it without them even knowing. So that is, one thing I used to catch quite a bit early on, and now everybody's caught on and say, hey, let's not do that. Let's tuck away this machine under the desk somewhere where people can't easily access it. Um, so, and it was mentioned about sitting down with people's desks. Also, you want to make sure that there are screen protectors, that the screen is visible, that you have the polarized screen protectors on them, so that the image can't be read from across the room. So those are the things I would continue to go from that standpoint.
I think I've got two ideas. I think they mesh pretty well with what Lorenzo mentioned. One is video surveillance. I think visible cameras do provide a little bit of a deterrence effect on visitors into your public areas. And so that's one thing. And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. There are cheaper solutions that you can pursue to obtain that. And then the second thing that I would encourage people to think about is, do you have sensitive information or equipment in an insecure location? And what steps can you take to make that equipment more secure? We have been in locations where voting equipment, tabulation equipment, out of cycle when it's not in active use, is stored in a location that may be less than 100% secure. And so I'd encourage people to think about that. Is there a different location if they find themselves in that situation? Is there a different location where that equipment could be stored? It could be monitored. It could be under video surveillance so that you can make it more secure in the off season.
And the other thing I would add, TJ, I mean, Lorenzo and Trevor, as always, are spot on. But I want to pull a thread that Lorenzo mentioned, having screen protectors on your computers. I would also encourage putting a screen protector privacy guard on your cell phone. Because I can't tell you how many times we've seen on the internet that someone will take a picture of someone else's cell phone from like around the corner and they're taking screenshots or pictures of your screen and taking it out of context because you're only going to see this much of the entire text exchange. So having privacy screens on your cell phone is equally important, whether you're at the office or you're out to dinner with family or traveling or just living your life. That little bit extra protection can really go a long way.
Awesome. All right, let's move back and forth. We're going to talk about regrets. Trevor, I know one of your regrets was that we didn't start working together sooner, but there's some things that we can't go back on. What purchases have you seen in your time in election administration, election technology? What purchases have you seen offices regret? What purchases have you personally regretted? Uh, how do folks avoid some of those mistakes?
I think a big piece of that is understanding where you are today and where your capabilities are. Okay. And I'll just the example that comes to mind is, on the IT side, on the cybersecurity kind of monitoring and management side, sometimes you'll find a salesman that is proposing a best of breed solution, right? Something that is going to do just whiz bang things, okay? But you're not trained on it. You don't have the people capacity to actually manage it, to manage that care and feeding. And I would encourage people to, instead of just looking at that best of breed solution, to think about something that may have other features that may be easier to use. A big way of getting guidance on that, I found, is reach out to peers, right? Uh, Building out and it kind of, we talked earlier about, hey, what are the no cost things you can try to do? Um, I think one of the most important no cost things you can try to do is find who that kitchen cabinet is. Who are the peers that you work with at the local, state, federal level in your community? And when you have those questions about, hey, is this a good purchase? Is anyone using this? How easy is it to use? Is it effective? Reach out to those stakeholders and partners that you've established relationships with.
Lorenzo, Spencer, any regrets?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of along the same lines as Trevor mentioned, is that an organization tries to turn their small office into an enterprise by buying some fancy tool that no one there can manage or has expertise or the time to take care of. I've seen that, plenty of times where it's just too much, and you have to almost keep it simple for the smaller network, and you can be just as secure by trying to right size the solution for the environment. Look for ways to consolidate. There's a lot of tools you can get just inside of Microsoft 365, for example. They can just add on and still have manageability of it. So um, also the other thing that I've seen people do is commit to too long of a contract on things they do buy. And it can be costly sometimes. Sometimes the price may go down in year two, but you've already committed to 5 years at this price. So, I always recommend shorter contracts whenever you do sign up for a service or a tool. So that way keep your commitment low.
So besides not knowing Trevor earlier in my life, TJ,
Ah,
besides that,
no,
I
it
would
was
say
me, Spencer. It
it was
wasn't Trevor. It was
okay.
me.
You as well, TJ. You as well. So everyone here, not knowing everyone here earlier in my life. So with that being said, the biggest thing, kind of going on with Lorenzo and Trevor mentioned, maybe just looking at what you already have. Because maybe you already are paying, you have everything and you're already paying for everything. You don't need anything else. You just need to turn it on, or you just need to
Mm.
do the thing. Um, like for example, Microsoft 365 and Google both offer really good email filtering. Don't get me wrong, going out and purchasing a third-party email filtering spam filter, I mean, sometimes that's the right decision. There are great products out there, but maybe just turning on the Microsoft one that you're already paying for might be good enough because that's not another piece of technology you have to buy. And it's something you're already paying for, and you don't have to worry about managing it once you turn it on. And TJ, when I was younger, you were probably what, two?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
would be
yeah.
weird.
We can't go back that far, Spencer, but it's okay. I don't know. I'm there's a mean joke in here somewhere that I'm gonna refrain from saying only because Trevor is still older than you are. Uh, all right. So I want to think about the context that we kind of brought up, which is the small offices, right? Thinking, 4 to 5 people on the team. Maybe one of those people is a wizard. You are lucky that you've got a Lorenzo, a Spencer, or a Trevor. Perhaps they're early in their career and they land with you, but you recognize this person is so talented. I'm not going to be able to keep them here. How do you make sure you use their time with you well so that you are increasing the capabilities of your office, but also not leaving a giant hole whenever they do leave that you can't fill? And functionally you just can't do the things that they once were able to do. What does that look like?
I would say the one item is cross training, another item is documentation, and number three is session planning. I would make sure to utilize all those wisely while we have this person. And, to continue on, there may be opportunity to utilize that person another way later. Like maybe it could be a shared resource for at a higher level in the government too. You still have access to them. But the first three are definitely the first things that stand out to me.
Lorenzo hit on the key phrase there, succession planning. It's not only for the leader of the office, it's also for those key subject matter experts and those gurus, as you said, TJ, within the office. I think um, there's a strategy that may be available to us today that is a little different than we've seen in the past. Okay. Dirty little secret, system administrators the world over use Google and Reddit to find solutions to technology problems. Okay. Today, some of those LLM systems can provide that same sort of guidance and maybe even finely tuned to your specific circumstance. So, a couple things, as Lorenzo said, cross training to eliminate those islands of knowledge and expertise, but spread that across documentation, but also automation. Thinking about if there are opportunities to automate, some daily, weekly, monthly tasks, so they become standard operating procedures and automations instead of something that requires, hands-on keyboard, individual expertise work. And so I think there are opportunities there.
And Lorenzo already said it, like pretty much everything. Trevor put the icing on the cake, but so I'm gonna go a little bit maverick on you, TJ.
Oh, Maverick, here he
Yeah.
comes.
Well, and I would say also, succession planning is important, documentation, cross training, all the things that were mentioned. Also, reinvesting in your technology people. Most technology people leave because they are frustrated, they haven't had growth opportunities, things like that. So, reinvesting in them. And I know a lot of people will say, well, if I train them up or I send them the training, then they're going to leave. Well, they might. What if you don't train them up and they stay?
Oh, that's one
Sometimes
of my
that's worse.
favorites.
Yeah.
This is a favorite of mine. I love that,
Yeah.
Spencer.
That's worse because you have someone who is, you know, been doing the same technology job they've been doing for 20 years and they have not evolved. And that's actually worse than having a new person come in and having to relearn everything.
I love it. I love it. I've heard that Top Gun is one of those movies that came out before I was born, Spencer. But luckily we had
Trevor and I were much still
you.
very, very much adults when that came out.
You guys know Goose. I know Rooster. How's that? All right. Let's see. Let's move on. So let's talk about free services and partnerships, kind of enterprise wide. I think Lorenzo, you began to hit on a point, which is that in many places, election offices exist within a bigger jurisdictional government. What are things that election offices should be looking to their their friends and other parts of government, looking to other organizations? Where does that start? How do you get the most bang for your buck, or someone else's buck in the case of using services that other parts of your jurisdiction have already taken advantage of?
So I think kind of the framing is, what's free or what partnerships can you involve yourself in, you know, and I mean the landscape has changed in the last couple of years, right? But I'm a big proponent. So there, with specific within the election space, some big companies offer services that are quite expensive if you're not within the public sector space. Thinking particularly of like Google Shield, Cloudflare, Athenian. They provide enterprise level denial of service protection and website monitoring capabilities that you can get for free if you work in the election space. If you manage an online presence for your jurisdiction and you don't at least know about those and know how to use those and know that they're available, then you're probably missing an opportunity. Okay, but so it's not really a free service other than your time. I will hit again on establishing relationships with partners in your local community at the state level and federal partners if you're able to. It takes time. You need to see and be seen by people. They need to know who you are and why you are who you are, and you need to know what their capabilities are, um, and they need to know what your expectations are, right? I'm thinking like law enforcement, emergency management folks. If you're working at the local level, state IT people, right? The state CISO's office or whatever. If you understand what they can do, what a state fusion center is, why they exist, what information they're gathering, and how you might actually be able to tap into that. Um, it's usually free, but you need to take the time to build the relationship so they know who you are and you can become part of the trusted circle that lives there. And it's free only in that there's not dollars coming out of your wallet, but it takes time. It takes time and persistence and consistency. Uh, Speaking for myself, establishing those relationships within the local community at the state level across the country, that's been the most valuable thing for me professionally and practically in terms of addressing operational issues.
Excellent. Lorenzo, Spencer. Spencer, any love for the election security exchange here?
Yeah, I would say lots of love for the election security exchange. Obviously, we have a lot of zero cost resources that are available anywhere from our resources and items that you could actually implement in your office. We also offer no cost phishing training, which is, literally a training designed for election officials, and it's very, very short because election officials don't have any time. It just popped in the chat. And the other thing I want to kind of pull string that Trevor mentioned, getting involved, the biggest thing it's going to take is time, which no one has, but it's worth investment. A lot of states have volunteer cyber response teams in one form or another. So whether it's through the National Guard or a private entity or through the EMA, there's some type of, voluntary incident response slash training slash whatever teams around, and getting plugged into those teams. the best the biggest advantage to that is you're getting plugged into the community. So you actually get the threat intelligence. You get to understand, oh, this is how that ransomware actor got in at the school district down the road. So therefore, that's how they could get into my office and what defenses I need to put up. So investing in your local community and letting your people invest their time is a big thing to consider.
Lorenzo, anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I would double down on just being, the networking portion of that everybody's kind of mentioned there. Talking to your peers, being part of the organizations. You never know what comes up because you're having a conversation that, you find out, this service is free, or this company offers a free tier for government agencies. A lot of it's not really available, so just having the communication and narrative with your peers can kind of help you find those Easter eggs that are out there.
Excellent. Well, let's jump to kind of the idea that, if you receive a grant or you receive a one-time bump to secure some type of service, and then you come to rely on said service, how do you effectively advocate among your budget decision makers that the tools and the kind of the infrastructure that you've put together is essential and deserves or requires ongoing investment? Where do you start there? How do you keep it moving forward?
I think, TJ, you start from the day you purchase the stuff. The day that you get the grant. Hey, we had the $10,000 grant. Amazing. So you go to the county commissioners, you go to your board, whoever your governing authority is, like, okay, we're getting this awesome $10,000 investment. Here's what I'm going to spend this on. Just so you know, in 3 years, there will be some cost. So we might be spending $1,000 in 3 years, but we're spending $1,000 on something that cost me $10,000 today. So I think you start early, you start often. You bring it up during every single budget hearing. So you don't, you like, hey, by the way, in 2029, we're going to have this cost. Here's what we're doing to address it. And then also talk about the benefits. You know, if you bought the $10,000, Microsoft 365 subscription, talk about all the benefits that you got from that. Oh, by the way, they just stopped 16,000 phishing emails from coming in yesterday, or the firewall stopped these attacks, or MFA saved my bacon 3 times this week. You know, those type of things are really important just to re-educate because, elections at the end of the day, you're probably going to love this, TJ. It's about communications. And budget stuff is also just about communications as well.
Love
Yeah.
it. Trevor, Lorenzo, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with starting that conversation immediately after purchasing something maybe covered by a grant. I would also, when you do accept a grant, make sure you look at what's allowed to see if you can leverage it for, maybe buying further into the future as well. So you have X amount of dollars, but maybe I can buy an extra year here or maybe get a discount and start to have that conversation too to kind of, maximize that spend that you have. But yeah, that's definitely I would definitely start the conversation right away with the people that be the powers that be and that control your budget because and ultimately at some point it's going to end. That's going to last forever. You spend that time building the value and the value in the service that you purchase.
Trevor, anything here? I know you come from the land of plenty.
Well, okay. So first off, I think the framing and how to kind of look at it, I think can help as you're trying to make that persuasive argument. Security is a race without a finish line. Um, we're never going to be done. It's kind of like trying to be a good supervisor, being a good boss, being a good spouse, being, whatever, being a good father, good mother. Uh, you're never at a point where you're like, hey, I'm done. I've done everything. Hey, I'm at the top. It's continual, right? It's not something static. It is a continual process. And so I think using that framing can be helpful. Another thing is we probably all in our work life, in our personal lives, we probably all have, whether it's written down or whether it's a mental list. Oh, here are the things we should do, right? Here's the list, right? And when you're making that ask of like budget approvers or, whatever, I think giving them the context of, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm asking for this. And I think explaining, well, here are the other 5 things that are on my list, but I didn't ask for these 4, right? I asked for this one, and here's why. And if you try to put it in terms of risk management, right? Why you thought this was the most important thing, because you got those 4 other things that you really think are important, but this is the one I'm asking for, right? I never miss an opportunity to say, I've got more. I've got more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Let's go back to staff training because I think a lot of what we've talked about is stuff or services or in some cases we've mentioned hardware. If I've got the opportunity to invest a little bit in my team, where should I be putting those dollars to enhance my security posture? Are there certifications, programs? What does that look like?
So when it comes to dollar one, I would always lean towards people first, not technology. The people are the ones that have to make the technology sing. But if you're not investing in your people, I mean, Spencer already touched on this. If they see a better opportunity for upward mobility or more knowledge and experience somewhere else, they might choose to take advantage of that. And so I'm a big believer in showing that you value your people by sending them to training, sending them. So when I was working in Colorado, I asked all of our managers and all of our individual contributors, I said, I need you to identify one training that would help you, that would benefit you this year. And I wanted it to be job related, but I didn't require that it be job related. It could be an area of interest that they thought, oh, I'd like to learn more about this. And because, I may have ideas about what might be the most effective training to send someone to, but they have ideas too. And I think leveraging that and putting the burden on them to say, hey, is there an online training? Is there something in state that you want to travel to? Is there a national conference that you think would provide benefit? Um, I would always lean towards spending that first dollar on people rather than things because the people are really there. That's what makes it happen.
I love it. Lorenzo Spencer.
Yeah, I would. One thing I would piggyback on the people aspect of that Trevor mentioned is the practice, the TTX, the investing in the people practicing what security looks like in the everyday, being that quote unquote human firewall um, in their day to day work. So I definitely think the investment in the people definitely an important aspect of that. Definitely come before the actual technology because, like I said, he already mentioned that we need the people to work the technology. So
Yeah, Trevor's been a quote machine today, guys. We're going to go back to the tapes and pull all sorts of good stuff. Security is a race with no finish line.
No.
Spencer,
Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, and I'd say one thing that I would add is, Lorenzo mentioned tabletop exercises. Those are amazing. They exercise yourself. Highly recommend everyone does an annual tabletop exercise. But I think the biggest thing that I would recommend is that you give your technology people time. Give them the time to invest in themselves. Give them the time to take the classes that you're paying for. A lot of times, no pun intended, if you buy a new firewall, you buy a new 365 subscription, you buy things like that, a lot of times you can bake into the deal that they get 8 hours of free training, or they get 12 hours or 36 hours or things like that. Well, then make sure that you help them get that class done. Because a lot of technology people, they're going to be so busy, they're going to get heads down, they're going to forget about it. That class is going to expire in a year. So hold them, be their accountability partner to ensure that they take that free class that you've basically already paid for with your purchase of whatever widget.
I love it. I love it. I love this focus on people, not just tech, and the payoff of that. I think we are nearing the end of our time together, guys. I encourage folks who have questions, please use the Q&A function if you'd like any of those answered. But my last question to each of you is looking ahead 12 months, we all happily get past the November 2026 election without incident. What should offices be putting money toward now that they will be glad that they did?
Oh, can I go first? I will
You can
absolutely, I'll
always,
always go first. So putting money toward, I would, right now, today, I would say hands-on experience with AI systems, both good and bad. And that's not just technology people, that's people throughout your office. I think understanding what the capabilities are. If you're in Microsoft 365, you've probably got access to Copilot. There are a bunch of systems out there, and I would encourage people to gain hands-on experience with that because you need to know the good and the bad. Okay, and the reality is, if you're not paying attention in your office to what AI systems are presenting in response to public queries about your office. Hey, you know what? A lot of people who live in your community are. And so I think understanding how to influence that and how those things work, I think it's critically important today.
excellent. Lorenzo Spencer.
I think I agree with the AI portion. I think if you wait for that, you're going to be behind the ball 18 months from now. So you'd be glad that you started that path of education and familiarization of the tools that are available to you. Um, I think and we already mentioned a lot about training. That's also the big, um, and I think especially with the election upon us, a lot of the I think Trevor touched on it earlier, a lot of the visible physical things that are deterrents would be good to have now, especially as we come into a major election right now. Again, like you said, just seeing that things look physically secure is a deterrent itself for a lot of problems. So definitely like that. Think that that would be something that people would be glad they did later on.
All right, last but not least, Mr. Spencer.
Yeah, I'm going to pivot back to people. Invest in the people. Have them sign up for whatever Fusion Center emails they can get hold of. So that they're getting that threat intelligence from the local Fusion Center. Consider having your IT person, sign up for InfoGuard, which is a free program the FBI has. There are a lot of very active InfoGuard chapters that will literally hold a monthly meeting. So you all get together and you basically just talk cyber and you talk, what are you seeing? What are you not seeing? What's going on? Things like that. And a lot of times there are other local community events around cyber, like B-Sides is one, which is for the really deep nerds if you want to get into complete nerdom. But just being in those spaces, back to what Trevor mentioned, building those relationships early, often. A friend of mine always calls it the ministry of presence, that, you have to kind of be there. So do that, and then you're really going to be in good shape.
I love it. The ministry of presence. Showing up is 90% of the battle. Well, I can't thank the three of you all enough for joining this conversation, for sharing your expertise, for continuing to do really excellent work with and on behalf of election administration professionals across the country. The field is better because of your work and expertise. To anybody in the audience, if you have any questions, our inbox is always open. Email us at support@readyfortuesday.com. Would happily get you in touch with any of the folks who are on the call today. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their Tuesday. Thank you, everybody.